Before we begin, thank you very much to Isabelzy for joining the Patreon campaign. Thank you very much for your support. It means the world to me. Thank you everyone to help me keep this channel going and to keep the daily content going. You guys are the reason I can continue to do this. I thank you very much for letting me continue to be a goofball on the internet. If you are watching this the day it uploads, keep in mind, today, Thursday, means we are doing our live D&D campaign over on my friend Gob's Twitch page. So come in, watch the adventure, join in. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, hope to see you there. Hope to see you there, because like this is like my favorite D&D campaign I've ever had, and I really want people to see it. Okay. We're going to be a little bit off topic today because we are talking Power Rangers, but I do touch on Power Rangers once in a while. We do a little Tokusatsu from time to time, and this one is particularly interesting. So here we are waiting for, we're waiting for the drop of the next Power Rangers show, Cosmic Fury, and this one is a lot of interest on it, not only because it's a 10-episode straight to Netflix series. It is completely original fight scene footage, original costumes, only reusing Q Rangers fight footage for the Zord battles. And we don't know what's coming after. We literally have no idea what is happening after this. So Power Rangers and Hasbro in general have been really quiet on the franchise itself. We know that there's a few toys slated for release still this year, but there's nothing really announced for 2024, and it's starting to become kind of concerning. Rumor is they are going to shelve the property after 2024 and reevaluate it. There was plans for a movie, but all that, of course, is currently derailed because of writer's strike, which might have to do with a hiatus. No shows to push new toys with. So everything's kind of in flux right now, but there are some things that came up that we have to discuss. There's a lot of stink made over the comments of one Simon Bennett, who's a producer on the series. Producer, I believe, is leaving the series, from what I read on Monster. I could be wrong. But point being, he's one of the guys mostly in charge of the franchise, and he's made a lot of comments that upset a lot of fans online. So let's examine those a little bit. This is the comment that started everyone off. I think, and this is only my opinion, that to reach a large mainstream audience, the franchise has to move away from its tokusatsu roots. It's this that has kept Power Rangers niche for so long with US audiences. It needs to do this in a way that is fresh and compelling. So what we're talking about here is reinvention, and the franchise is 30 years old now and still kind of does the exact same thing. They just change up the look of everything, but essentially, yeah, every year it's the same old thing. Every year it's just new Zords, new suits, and basically the same visual style, the same, appeal. We kind of deal with this in Super Sentai, where we're all kind of scared. Like every season of Super Sentai lately is going to be the last season of Super Sentai because the ratings decline. We don't really know every time how well the toys do, so we can't really judge that. All we know is it just seems like the interest has waned a lot on the franchise, even in Japan. And it's mostly because, for the same reason, it's kind of stagnation. We have seen them try to do new things in the past. It does bolster interest, and from what I hear, the current series, King Oger, is actually doing good, and it's because it's doing things completely differently. So, but it's still sticking. It's still tokusatsu. It's still live action, right? Everything in it. Well, except the backgrounds. Point being, it still has that tradition to it. What we're talking about here is doing away with that tradition, which Hasbro may be forced to do at this point. Now, here's the thing. I'm a Transformers fan. I've been through this debate, and we went through it with Beast Wars. At the time, everyone was against this, right? Like, the backlash for the early internet crowd was huge, and found out there's backlash even within Hasbro over it. Fans didn't like it because truck, not monkey. But also, the execs didn't like it because the writers were replacing every character and starting fresh with a completely new cast No stand-ins. No, none of the core characters would ever be returning for this show. And they didn't like that. A lot fought against it. The writers did win, and today we think better of it. Beast Wars is a great show because it was allowed to do things new. So maybe there's a merit to this, right? Maybe there actually is something to it. To look at a franchise and go, this is kind of stale. You know, this has kind of been failing over the last few years. It's declining in interest. Maybe it's time to do something new. We kind of talk about this with live-action Transformers movies. Every one of them since Age of Extinction has been on the downslope. You know, to the point where Rise of the Beast is the worst performing one yet. And all of that is just, it feels like it's all down to just audience exhaustion. You know, and that's over the course of 15 years. Power Rangers have been doing the same thing for 30 years, right? So we know that there is a lot of rough patches when it comes to Power Rangers, right? So maybe it is kind of getting stale. Maybe the interest is waning. You know, keep this in mind. It's kind of a hot potato franchise where Disney bought it when Saban said this is getting too expensive and the ratings are declining. We just need to get rid of this. They sold it off to Disney. Disney tried to reinvent it a little bit, but still same formula and everything. You know, a few years in, they sell it back to Saban. You know what a thing is? You know how bad it is when a show gets sold back to its original owner? When any intellectual property gets sold back to its original owner, because usually a popular franchise is bought by a bigger company. You know, Saban sold it to Disney. That makes sense. We see that a lot with video game mergers, and we see that a lot with, well, frankly, every business, combination. You know, it's always the bigger fish eating the smaller fish. When the smaller fish is the one eating from the big fish, that's bad. That means they got rid of it dirt cheap, you know? And that's what happened to Power Rangers. And then just a few years later, Saban sold it off to Hasbro. So now it's like hot potatoing all over the place. And everyone is trying to do the same thing. Try to turn this thing around and make it as profitable as it used to be. But that seems like it's been difficult for a lot of them. Okay, so initial thoughts out of the way. Let's see what the next comment from him was. I think part of Hasbro's goal to move Power Rangers to being fully original is to reduce aspects of Sentai style and design, which may be challenging for US kids. The superheroes in spandex fighting rubber monster suits trope is a hard sell to audiences brought up on the Marvel and Star Award. I'm assuming that means Star Wars. And to be fair, it's not entirely incorrect. There were superhero franchises around in the 90s when that one took off, but we didn't have anything like Power Rangers. It was the Tokusatsu part that was unique and stylish to everybody. It's what draws us in the first place. For the first time, there's action scenes happening with real people rather than just watching a bunch of cartoons do it. So it was different. It was new. It was exciting. And then, we kind of got used to it. No other franchise really does it in America. So it's still uniquely the Power Ranger thing, but the show's still in the decline, when a show has to go to Netflix to get its last season out, that's troubling, right? When no network says, we're not picking this show up, you're not worth spending ad revenue on. That's bad. That's bad. And there is some truth to it. A lot more kids have seen Avengers than they have Power Rangers. It's just a fact of it. We know that from the toy sales being better. We know that from the movies being more successful. Power Rangers had its chance at the box office and kind of blew it. Something that they could have set up franchises and sequels for. If the movie had taken off the way that it really should have, the way that the Transformers movies took off, then you would have seen Saban hold on to the property, and we probably would be on like movie 3 or 4 by now. We would have had a Green Ranger spin-off movie by now. We would have had the Zeo sequel. Things like that would have been a thing. And unfortunately, the movie didn't know the assignment. There's a lot about the movie that went wrong. That's a discussion for another day. Point being, again, we have signs that this franchise has been struggling for a long time. And maybe these comments are not as off base. Just because they upset us as adult fans doesn't mean that they're wrong. That's the thing. That's the thing I'm taking away here, is that there's truth to this. If you look at it objectively, take away your obsession with Super Sentai, take away your obsession with Tokusatsu and being traditional and maintaining tradition. And there's truth to what's being said here. So let's go to another comment. Super Sentai and Kamen Rider are fantastically imaginative and brilliantly successful. I love them and also adore Studio Ghibli films. However, some aspects of these properties are very specifically Japanese in their sensibilities and will therefore be niche appeal in the US. This is where I say that Hasbro might be forced to reinvent and do Power Rangers completely original and organic, because we have things like ToQger. Trains are a huge cultural thing in Japan. Here in America, it's that noisy thing that interrupts your trip to school. It's also very rare to see a train, whereas in Japan, trains can be a part of your daily life. So they're just not cool to kids, not the way they need to be in order to actually sell toys. Unless you're Thomas the Tank Engine, a toy train is not going to do it. Hasbro found this out in 2001 when the Bullet Train team did so poorly, they actually stated to fans, "We're not going to reissue these or repaint these because they did so badly." Kids don't know trains. So ToQger, not going to work. King Oger is not going to work. You know, when you see things like this, bug toys aren't really going to work for an American crowd. Over there, they've got, 50 years of a Kamen Rider telling them, yeah, bugs can be heroes. And over there isn't as much of a stigma about a lot of bugs. Kids have pet rhino beetles that they do sumo matches with. Pet mantises are a thing. They treat some of their insects with a lot more respect than we do with our ant traps and our roach spray, So it's a very different culture. And you look at things like Dawn Brothers, which is overtly Japanese. And you realize that, yeah, there's so many things that come out that they're trying to appeal to Japanese kids. It's not going to work in the US. And to try that every single time and just say you have to adapt every Super Sentai is absurd, because it's just not going to work. It's not going to work in America because there's different tastes and different sensibilities in design and what it's based on. So you can't expect them to do that. You can't, and with Super Sentai constantly sticking to what works in Japan, it's constantly going into things that might not work in the US or definitely won't work in the US. So going fully original is the only way to actually avoid that. Now, it doesn't mean you have to give up the Tokusatsu roots. They could continue to do like Cosmic Fury, but, look at Cosmic Fury. We're only getting 10 episodes of it, which should tell you how expensive it is to do just original suits and fight footage, even if you're still borrowing the Zords. And we're kind of like in the last like thralls of Zords that will actually work for these fights, right? Because they're generic enough, and they're just based on normal things, so yeah, that kind of works. It kind of works, but the well's running thin on what they can adapt that's going to work. 'Cause keep in mind, this is it's very much a mood thing in the US too. Some things will work sometimes they won't. It's seasonal, or this year bugs are in, so maybe it would work, but they're not now. I had a run a couple years ago where you go into the toy section, there's nothing but poop and toilet toys, because it was just the year for gross out toys, and that's come and gone, so if they tried to do a Super Sentai based on toilets now, it's not going to work. So let's see another comment from him. Call me radical, but I suspect that those adult Power Ranger fans who are also diehard Super Sentai fans may be vociferous when PR deviates from its traditional source material, but are also a minuscule percentage of viewership of the show, which is made for children. Let's be honest here, he's right. We as fans consider ourselves kind of superior because we've seen this show for so long. We're such authorities on the show and the source material. We feel like we know best. We feel like we know better. We have a sense of entitlement to us. Let's be honest. Transformer people watching this video, G1ers, the people who say G1 or nothing, right? That's the kind of attitude that a lot of collectors, a lot of longtime fans have. But the truth is, We don't really watch a lot of the current shows. I know from when I do my Earthspark reviews, not a lot of you view those because not a lot of you care about the new show, even though it's really, really good. Because you're just not interested in the material. And I know that a lot of you as Power Ranger fans, you monitor what Hasbro or what Disney or what Saban did with the franchises you love. I know because of the Super Mega Force video I did, but you don't actually watch it all the time. I'm willing to bet very few of you do. There are those who do. All the power to you. But the truth is, we're just not that big of a market. We're just not nearly as much of the market as you think. And a big part of that is because the market for Power Rangers is working differently than how any other franchise of that age is working. Because they try to keep interest by constantly keeping refreshed. New Zords, new suits, new characters, new story every year or two. And that's something that no other franchise does at this franchise's age. At 30 years of age, you need to start banking on nostalgia. You really do. So, we kind of learned this with, we kind of learned this with like modern stuff. Mighty Morphin stuff still sells because Mighty Morphin has this nostalgia power behind it. And we kind of go through that with Transformers as well. Because remember, Transformer fans cried out for things like Unicron Trilogy for years. But Unicron Trilogy hadn't hit the magic nostalgia point, which is about 20 to 25 years, somewhere in there. You have to let the age that grew up with that series, with that era of a franchise, you have to let them grow up and hit an age where they have not only disposable income and a desire to re-experience the things they had from childhood, but also may have kids of their own that they want to show what mom and dad watched when they were their age. That's what fuels a nostalgia market. That's what fuels the kidults, as much as I hate that term, but it's a better term than man-children. So, you kind of get away from that with Power Rangers. See, we learned it with Transformers. We had this big outcry for like Unicron Trilogy stuff for a long time, but it hadn't hit the 20-year point, so Hasbro's very reserved about it. Now, we're all over the place. So we've got a new Starscream, a new Megatron, a new Hotshot, a new Optimus Prime. The rumor mill buzzes with others from Armada and the Unicron Trilogy as a whole that might be on the way in the next year or two. And now they can get away with it because it's fresh, and a big thing to it is, this is stuff that still appeals to kids just because it looks like a cool toy. These are not, to a kid, they've never seen Hotshot. All they see is like this cool red and yellow character, and they're gonna pick up the toy because it just looks neat. That's how they get away with marketing things to collectors and kids at the same time. They can make, Hasbro by their own admission, makes Transformers that are designed off of old things because it does guarantee sales from collectors, but we are still a small amount of the percentage of sales compared to kids who don't need to know the fiction, don't need to know the history of the character or even the name. All they need to know is that's a cool looking character and they'll ask their parents to buy it. And that's how most toy sales work. When you get into things for like Power Ranger collectibles, again, the only thing that really accomplishes that is Mighty Morphin. Some of the older series do carry some nostalgia and some demand. In Space, Wild Force, Time Force, RPM. The shows that kind of evolved beyond for certain people and are much more like standout and memorable. But ultimately, the gravy train is always Mighty Morphin, right? Bandai of America learned that when they were doing their Legacy collection, and they stopped at the Ninja Megazord because the sales were just kind of flagging for year one. For the year one stuff, they couldn't sell enough Dragon Zords, couldn't sell enough Megazords, and then they got to the Thunder Megazord, which went on like clearance at Toys R Us's, and then the Ninja Megazord did the same. So I never got my Shogun Zord. I hate you, Bandai of America. But we also saw this with their normal action figure sales. When they tried to bank on nostalgia, Bandai of America, they dumped an entire team on there at the same time, And they sold poorly. Why? Because kids just picked the one they liked the best. They picked their favorite color, is what they did. And then there's an entire rack they don't even touch. Didn't want the yellow, didn't want the pink, didn't want the blue, didn't want the red. All they wanted was the Green Ranger. So they just left with the Green Ranger, and everyone else just kind of looks like the same thing. So kids are not interested in collecting complete teams, so to bank that way, meh. Hasbro, I think, did it right with Lightning. Slowly dole out the Mighty Morphin. And you can see it now that they're doing Mighty Morphin again with these enhanced boxes. But those periods where they didn't have anything Mighty Morphin in their layouts, you can see even those were not doing well. So what do you do? What do you do? You're at this point where you really do need to bank on nostalgia, and it's getting too expensive to keep doing it the traditional way. So I think Hasbro, I think Power Rangers needs its Beast Wars. The problem with that is you can't just do completely new because that's what they do every year. What you have to do is do something completely different by bringing back the original. I've spoken this idea before. I'll try and be quick because we're past the 20-minute mark already. But you've got more to benefit from doing something brand new. Let's take Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Despite what fans of classic Turtles would say, it's hard to deny that this show actually did do some unique things that were ultimately a benefit to the franchise. Being able to depict the Turtles differently in design rather than just color and personality stands out huge. And it's the kind of thing I think Power Rangers really needs to embrace, If you go back to a Mighty Morphin setting, you're not limited by what they did before. You're not limited by what they're doing in the footage or what Japan releases toys. Things that might not work in the American market, right? So to do it like this, to do it animated, for instance, if we're just going to completely do this original, because Hasbro would go animated to go completely original, you could do things that weren't possible before. You could have Rangers with unique body types. The Black Ranger could be a little taller. The Blue Ranger can be a little scrawnier. The Red Ranger could be more muscular. You could have a more athletic build for the Yellow Ranger and a more svelte, kind of nimble build for the Pink Ranger. You could have different details on their costumes, different pieces of armor to kind of make them more distinct, You could give them more personality and make each one kind of stand out amongst themselves rather than just being the same toy in different color schemes. You could make them feel more fleshed out and more diverse, and that is not necessarily a bad thing when the hard part about your franchise is everyone kind of looks the same. So you have that option. And then for adult fans, it's going to appeal because it's Mighty Morphin again. And even if the Rangers look different, you can go all out with the Megazord. Because not only can you just remake the original Megazord and make it look super cool and modernized, you can add to it. You can have a completely new Dinozord replacing the others. If I want to have a Stegosaurus for a leg instead of the saber-toothed tiger, I can do that. If I want to have if I don't want a Mastodon for the arms and I want to have an Ankylosaurus that's more heavily armored and spiky, we can do that. We can come up with new Rangers. We can come up with new Zords. We can expand on the original concept, make it appeal to the adult collectors, but also still make it really cool and modern for kids. And here's the thing. I know the live action is what makes it unique, but if it's not doing good TV-wise, if it's not producing what they needed to do on TV, then you have to admit it's not working anymore, and you have to be willing to change. And keep this in mind. You can have fully animated Power Rangers and not lose the original spirit of Tokusatsu. You can still have the cheesiness. You can still have similar choreography to the action. You can still have the quips and the nuances that Power Rangers like to incorporate. That doesn't, just because it's animated doesn't mean it can't feel like Power Rangers does. It just means you're not limited anymore. And it means you can do whatever you want, and you can adapt with the times, which is desperately what Power Rangers needs to do. Adapt. So while Simon Bennett's comments did light up the community, did light up everyone's Twitter feed for a while, I don't think he's entirely off base. Would I like Power Rangers to say traditional? Yes. But I admit, between Japan doing franchises and styles that are never going to work in America and doing them more and more often, and the expense of doing it live action, and the fact that an American produced tokusatsu is never going to look as good as a Japanese one. I mean, let's be honest. I love the fact that the Red Ranger is based on Ankylosaurus, but even that is not going to save the fact that these suits just do not look as good as what Toei makes. I think ultimately it's a foolhardy effort. It's a foolhardy thing to think we're going to still do it the way Japan does it. I just think it's just not going to be practical, and I don't think it can be sustainable. So that's my 2 cents. I think it's time Power Rangers had a complete redo. I think it's time to take it back to basics, put it on hiatus, come back with something completely fresh and original. If that means doing away with the tokusatsu, it's worth trying. It's worth trying. I'll just put it that way. So, I know you're going to disagree with me in the comments. I know you are not in favor of ditching the live action elements, but still, I hope you listen to this, and I hope you take it into account. I hope you try to view it more objectively, because ultimately what's important to Power Rangers is survivability, not necessarily maintaining tradition, but actually managing to still be a thing and not fall into the trap of like G.I. Joe, that never did anything new, kept doing the same real American hero thing, and look at the state that that franchise is in. You know, we know from Transformers, adaptability keeps a franchise alive. You know, and I would say the same of like Marvel. So let's look at it in that respect. Let's try to keep an open mind. Try to stay calm in the comments section, and I will see you next time.
I'm like, I think you guys got this. I will back away, and I will see you all later.
You've got this handled.
Alafi's like, really? You're not gonna help me? Like, it's fine now.
It's like these disgusting creatures breathing down my neck, and you're all just like, I believe in you. You got this.
All right, you seem to have this. 5 minutes.